Yesterday, the Komape family in Limpopo was awarded 1.4 million rand for the death of their 5-year-old son Michael in a pit latrine at his school. The Limpopo Education Department says 500 schools in the province still use pit toilets. Now, in light of this court victory, we ask, how much would it really cost taxpayers to eradicate all pit latrines at South African schools? Joining me now is Umunyana Rugege, who's Executive Director at NGO Section 27, which brought the application on behalf of the Komape family. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So how many pit latrines are there really in the country? Have we calculated that, especially at schools, and how much will it cost to eradicate them?
I think that's such a critical question, and the problem that we have is that there is no number. There are contradictory numbers coming from different departments, and there are contradictory numbers that come from us. So our numbers, where we've counted in Limpopo, toilets that are unsafe and unhygienic, pit toilets, our numbers don't correlate. So part of the problem is poor data, and without good data, there's no way we're going to actually know the extent of the problem and begin to fix it. So one of the key things that came out of the High Court ruling in 2018 was that the Limpopo government would have to do an audit. And once they've done that audit to find out how many schools, what condition, what is needed, they can then come up with a plan which would seek to eradicate pit toilets altogether.
And I'm wondering just how possible is that, because exactly about 2 years ago the Department of Basic Education itself put out an estimate of how much it was going to cost to build better ablution facilities, and the question was, how could you estimate that it's possibly going to cost about 10,000 per unit if you don't know how many pit latrines are out there? So they still at a national level don't have that figure.
No, and I think what we need right now is good data. So the priority now for us as Section 27 after this court victory is to go back to Limpopo and engage the government on this audit and the plan that is meant to come out of the High Court ruling of 2018. So that there's a lot of work to be done, in fact.
And the school's infrastructure fund, can it afford it?
Well, it's not a matter of can it afford it. The funds are available, and the problem is not money. So it's not like we need the private sector or we need some additional allocations. Money is not the problem. The problem is political will to get this done. This is not rocket science, as some politicians have said, rightly so, that all we need to do is have the political will to go down to Limpopo and to all the provinces. This is not isolated to Limpopo, by the way. We have focused in that province. But we need to get onto the ground, find out what the situation is, and come up with a reasonable plan, as is constitutionally required of the Limpopo government.
And I know there have been several cases that also happened in the Eastern Cape of such deaths like Michael Komape, but the country was really quite, taken aback by that. But is it because his was publicized, or are there more others that we don't know about?
Certainly, it is not an isolated incident. And what, we started representing that particular family, the Michael Komape family, but there are other families that came forward once we started publicizing this issue around this one child to say, my child was injured, my child died as a result of falling into a pit toilet. So it's not an isolated incident by any stretch. And I think that is known by the state. It's known that there are children who continue to die, and these children's rights are being violated, which is what the courts have said repeatedly, that we must ensure a safe, dignified and hygienic infrastructure for children. It cannot be the status quo going forward that there's a risk to a child who goes to school, a 5-year-old child or any age, who goes to school and may never return home.
Umunyana, let's talk about the requisite skills and capacity then to actualize this goal of eradicating pit latrines. Does the department or government have them?
I think they do. And as I said, it really is the political will to gather those skills. We don't struggle to put out tenders when we need the expertise. Where external expertise is required, then we know how to do that as a country. We have processes, we have the PFMA to gather information in order to be able to come up with a plan. This is the essential thing, is to come up with that reasonable plan, which has been required of the Limpopo Department of Basic Education by the High Court already. And remember as well, there's the norms and standards, regulations around school infrastructure. So there are lots of obligations, and the answer cannot be that we cannot do it. The answer has to be how do we do it.
Let's talk about how do we do it. Business, can you get them to the party? Because we surely, as communities, should be purely reliant on the public sector. And is there a green solution to this?
I'm not sure about the green solution to this, but you know, there should always be an exploration of what can be done with the limited resources that we have in the state. And I think the Supreme Court of Appeal as well said that we understand as a society that there are limited resources. We are not out here saying we want gold toilets. We want toilets that are for children, that are hygienic and safe for them at schools. And so we must find ways to do that, whether it's consulting, looking at different countries. We don't want to spend too much time studying the problem, because essentially we know the problem. We need to get the expertise. Different parts of the state need to work together, whether it's public works, infrastructure, basic education, health. There needs to be cooperation amongst those government departments. We also have a constitutional obligation around cooperative governance. We need to get to those kinds of things together. And the communities have now been emboldened by this ruling to say, yes, now we know what we can go and demand at our school, at our district. And I hope that, you know, there will be much more groundswell of communities. They have been voiceless for a long time, but I hope that this is one of the things that enables them to engage their provincial departments, district departments, and the schools, so that we can start to see pressure from the communities. And as to business, you know, business does what business does, and I think the presidency has, part of that initiative of the president is to involve business. And I'm sure that business will come to the party, I have no doubt about that. But there has to be some engagement from the state as well.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Umunyana Rugege is with Section 27. It's time now for your sports news.